Hello and welcome again to Reiki Women Podcasts. I'm Bronwyn Logan, and with me are my lovely colleagues. We have Michaela Daystar and we have Carrie Varela. Welcome, and welcome to everyone who is watching us today. We have a topic which I think has a lot of interest, and it is about the subject of being psychic. So practicing the system of Reiki, learning the system of Reiki, do we become psychic? Big question. All right, so I'm not sure who'd like to take us off on this journey today, but I'm sure we've got lots to discuss. Who's going first?
Well, I could jump in because this was prompted by a question that was asked in my Facebook group about a person noticing that as they began working with Reiki, what they had already identified as kind of a natural psychic inclination increased and became more prominent in his life. And he was curious about that and curious what other people's experiences were with the connection between Reiki and psychic energy. And that is not a realm that I have a lot of experience in. I don't identify as psychic. I feel like I have a pretty robust intuition, and I believe that psychic abilities are like an expanded intuition, right? It's kind of how I understand it is that it is a particularly expanded and sensitive sense of intuition that some people naturally have that we can develop to a certain extent. But it's not something that I particularly identify with or have spent time developing. So I turned that question over to my esteemed colleagues, and we had a pretty interesting conversation about it that we thought might be beneficial to a wider audience. So a little bit of context there, and I'm going to pitch it over to Carrie.
Such an interesting topic, I think. And I think I am excited about this conversation to kind of flesh it out a little bit, because I think it's a lot of times just washed together: Reiki and psychic awareness, Reiki and angelic guidance, Reiki, and intuition. And I think that there's a lot of things to think about, and I've had to wrestle with at various times in my own, work inside of Reiki for myself, and also with my students and others. So, generally I'd say that I think there's this ray aspect of Reiki, which is the universe. It is spiritual, it is big, it is expansive. There's a lot of different words that we can attach to that. I've seen people attach God consciousness to it, and so I've been really focused in the last few years to really try to dive deeper into traditional Reiki to understand, exactly what was meant and is meant to be transmitted through those words, because there's a lot of power in the words, and also kind of unbend myself from maybe misconceptions, misunderstandings of the way in which these words are understood in my mind, so that I can transmit them more purely. Also called it, implicit biases. Sometimes we think of spiritual matters and we immediately go to, our own understanding of spirit. So my work, I think, when I step into that realm of spiritual energy, is trying to, yes, decipher it, but also to not misinterpret it as well. So I do think it's absolutely possible that one can develop psychic abilities with Reiki, I think, and I've experienced instances in my own path where I've had, a really profound gift, a message. I myself am a little clairaudient. I can hear messages at times. Really what I consider the greatest gift with Reiki is actually, or my gift within Reiki is energy, is this ability to transmit an energy to others that can create a shift that helps us, release stuff that is kind of lingering over us, helps us connect more deeply to our hearts and to our where we really want to go. So I feel like that's more my gift within Reiki. And over time, I've cultivated that gift. I think that there is some maybe some challenges within the world of, relating Reiki with psychic powers and abilities. And maybe we want to hear what Bronwyn has to say before I kind of dive into that. But, one thing I did mention when you were asking that, Michaela, to our smaller group, and then we decided to make this a bigger conversation, is that, within India, it's very common to develop a psychic gift. Like, it's a very respected pathway, something that you can absolutely do and make a living out of, and be known as a healer, psychic, yogi, astrologer. And it's quite common, in times of transition, change, or especially in marriage and career, that you would consult somebody like that to give you some bigger picture, some bigger awareness of the meaning and purpose of your life. And I think it does speak to, human desire. All of us have this desire to know our dharma, which again is a yogic term, but dharma means our life purpose. And within the culture of yoga, and the culture, I should say, of India, is that, we all have a dharma. We all have a reason, a purpose for living. And I think the only way that you can really access that reason or purpose for living is to know it, and to understand what that is. And so a noble, worthy quest in all of us is to find our dharma, to find our gift, to find our meaning and purpose. And I think we all need support in that. I don't think we can do it alone. So we're all here to support ourselves, to find that inside of ourselves. But I think the true message of it all is that it is inside of us. And so other people can point us and illuminate and help us uncover that for ourselves. But it's not something that's external, that's given to us.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, we were talking about earlier that when people do take a Reiki course, that they do have often an idea that someone has told them, or they've heard something about that when they, receive an attunement, or, that sort of thing, that they're going to have some psychic experience, or their abilities will be enhanced, or and if that doesn't happen, well, what happens? Disappointment. So this idea of expectation, which is something that we talk about as in, how do I say that, in life terms. We need to be careful with our expectations, because expectations lead us down funny roads. And so is it true? I think that's what we're asking today. Is that true? I would say that when we study the system of Reiki, when we practice the system of Reiki, that we are practicing letting go. So we're not practicing taking on, which is sort of what you were saying, Carrie. It's not an external thing, internal thing. So we're letting go. So we're letting go of expectations. We're letting go of a lot of the stuff that we're holding on to, and we want to bit by bit let go of that. And when we do, what happens? Well, our natural senses, our innate sense, comes to the fore. Yeah. So forget about psychic. I mean, maybe it's touch or physical things that become more enhanced for us. Yeah. Or it can be any of our senses. Yeah. And I would include psychic, if that word, within that. Yeah. So as a sense, so that ability to understand and see the world through, Michaela, you use the word intuition, through this other ability, and that too becomes enhanced. And it's not because we're taking on something, but because we're letting go of things. So we're giving ourselves pause and break to actually feel and be who we really are, rather than some cluttered being that we've created over time. And I cannot remember this poem. I forget it every time, but the Meiji Emperor poem, Meiji Emperor's poem that is used within the system of Reiki, which talks about, I wish my mind could be as vast as the sky. Yeah. And that vastness is that, isn't it? It is that the mind not holding on to things, the mind letting go, and really allowing ourselves to just be and to experience life. And I think that, psychic is that. It's just really being able to see and read the world through that vastness. And one other point before I just finish with that is that I think we can't have the vast sky without other aspects. And we always talk about grounding. And to me, to really be psychic, to have that experience of being psychic, we need to have a very strong grounding. Otherwise, we do get confused and we do misunderstand and create other stories around it. But if we are grounded, so we have the earth and the sky, so the earth holding on to the sky, if you like. If we have those two together, then we really do create that beautiful whole, and that is a balanced space. And we all need balance when we're dealing with psychic stuff, because if we don't, we start, imagining things and we're not sure what's right, what's wrong, and it can be a very confusing place to be.
Yeah. I love that you root it in what are the experiences we can observe when practicing the system of Reiki, and letting like poetry be part of the description of that. I want to just say that poem you were thinking of, because it just came right to me when you said it. And I think it really actually does illustrate kind of what I'm feeling about this as well. And the poet says, like a great sky in clear light green, I wish my heart would be as vast. And, we have that, as you say, that mirroring of the strong foundation, rooted, grounded, feet on the ground, clearly observing our life from the ground view, and then that in harmony, in balance with this vast, wide open sky. And like, what a beautiful description of a healthy, robust intuition, right? Or psychic ability. And what I can say, as I said, I don't identify as psychic, but I do identify as having a robust intuition. And that robust intuition absolutely developed as a result of my Reiki practice. I've told in other, places the story of, essentially losing access to my intuition over years of ignoring it and, dissociating and numbing myself out because of really difficult life circumstances. And then, turning back towards it and doing the work of clearing away all of the crap that I had covered it over with, as you were just describing, and going through that process of clearing and then coming back into right relationship with my intuition, including the ability to discern, is this voice truly my intuition, that part of myself that is the integration of my body, my heart, my mind, my voice, and the world outside, right? The network of life that I'm connected to. Is it that voice, or is it some other voice? Is it the voice of my fears or my limiting beliefs, or that tiny hurt child part of myself that's trying to keep myself safe, or some gremlin that doesn't believe I can really do anything, or whatever, my hatred towards somebody else that's hiding back there, right? Like, which voice is it that's actually speaking? And practicing Reiki absolutely has developed that ability to feel that voice, to hear it, to discern it, and to take action. And that's through the specific practices that are inside of the system, particularly from the perspective of its Japanese roots, where we have these practices that first and foremost ask us to look inside. So we're clearing the distractions of all the other voices that are outside of us. We're looking inside, we're paying attention to what's happening inside of ourself, our body, our mind, our heart. We're doing that process of clearing the garbage out of the way so that we can take a clear look, and we're integrating all of those parts of ourself. So working with the concept of San Mitsu, of the three mysteries of how we experience the world through our body, through our mind, through our voice, our energy, integrating those three, integrating all parts of ourselves so that we come fully online. We come fully in contact with that network of information inside of ourselves and outside of ourselves. And it's like the practices are so simple, and the impact on our daily life can be so profound when we do those simple, steps of turning inward, paying attention to what we are experiencing, clearing away what's in the way, and integrating these parts of ourselves. I say that as if that's like easy. It is not, right? But it's simple. And there are simple practices that get us there. And from my experience of coming back from total disconnection with my intuition to full connection and integration with my intuition, ability to hear it, interpret it, discern it, and respond to it, I can absolutely see that for somebody whose intuition or senses, right? So you mentioned being clairaudient, Carrie, and other ways of knowing outside of our logical mind, right? Because what is psychic ability other than knowing things that we don't actually have the factual evidence for, right? Like knowing things outside of our direct experience. And that knowing can come through any of our senses. And so for somebody who already has an enhanced sense in some way, these practices in the system of Reiki will absolutely enhance that, because as you said, Bronwyn, the system of Reiki enhances our senses. It enhances our sense of self, our sense of connection to ourself and to the world around us. And so that can't help but increase those abilities. I think to Carrie's point, where we want to be careful is in linking those two in a more direct kind of set of expectations and causalities, that the purpose of Reiki, or one of the expected outcomes of Reiki, is to become psychic, because that is definitely something I've heard. It's something that people have asked me as a teacher, will you teach me to be psychic? Will that be an outcome that I can experience? Or people who have experienced this increase in psychic ability in connection with their Reiki practice, really making it about the Reiki practice in a way that makes other people expect the same results. I think that's where we need to be careful. It's like that there are many outcomes that can happen as a result of turning inside, clearing away what's in the way of our true self, and integrating all parts of ourself. There are many things that we experience as really valuable outcomes of doing that. Potentially an increase in psychic ability and intuition is one of those outcomes, but that's not the intended outcome, and it's not a guaranteed outcome, and therefore should not be our expectation. I've had people say, I haven't gotten any more psychic, therefore I must be doing it wrong. My attunement didn't work. I'm practicing incorrectly. That's not necessarily so, right? That shows an attachment to a particular outcome that is not guaranteed or promised. So yeah, I think I'm really resonating with what both of you are saying on that.
Yeah, I think so. For me, when I think of that, I think the key word that we've been speaking to a lot is expectation. And I think anytime you put an expectation around something, you're almost guaranteed, especially in the world of energy healing and spiritual work, is that you're going to get disappointed, because that's, well, I don't know. Like if you have this expectation, oh, I'm going to experience this, it takes away like the organic arising of and authenticity of what's happening in that moment. If we have this expectation, oh, am I going to see like a bright angel surrounding me and my attunement, and then we're not in touch with what we're really experiencing in our body or in energetically. So that's, I think, always a big sign, that we're not in the right place really to actually be in touch with authentic psychic awareness. And here's the thing, as I've gone full circle with this topic as well, and had, my own unique experiences. And I can look back at one of my first experiences really awakening to psychic energy or spiritual awareness is I was in a yoga class, and I just, did this whole practice, stretched everything. I felt amazing, was in this deep spiritual place in Shavasana, and then came up out of that. And the question that was on my heart, and I just, in this really beautiful place, I just was able to speak it clearly. And the question for me in that time in my life was, and the person I'm with, the one? And I could speak that was my confusion. That's the guidance that I needed. That's the clarity that I was seeking. And I didn't have any expectation that I would get a response, but all of a sudden I asked it, and like a bell rang through my whole body, and this message came. It said, "He's not the one." And I was like devastated because I love this person. He meant everything to me, but there was this frustration, this lack of compatibility that we had. And so, even in from that moment, I kind of denied that message, but I could feel it like vibrating in my body. And it gets you kind of addicted, right? To that, like, oh, like if I could just find the right question and I get that clarity and that answer, and then I don't have confusion anymore, and I don't have discomfort around the life choices I need to make, and how do I find that clarity? And for me, I kind of went down a rabbit hole, and there's I don't know which shamanic tradition this comes from, so I apologize for that. But in some shamanic traditions, there's this thought that like an awakening, a psychic awakening, a spiritual awakening, the precipice of that can be mental instability. And that can actually, mental instability can be the process of birthing your healer. And I was in a state pretty much from that moment for maybe 5 years, where I was in a real state of mental health issues, just feeling like, I don't know what my reality is. I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm getting messages all over the place, really confused, really lost, not knowing what my authentic voice is. And yet in the midst of that, also having really vibrant, awake, spiritual experiences. I could say that like, even now, I can feel energetic presence around me. Times where I felt there was a presence in my room that I could not deny that it was not there. It was there. Like I could feel it on all these different layers. And so for me, there is I think it's important to mention that if you're psychic, it does not mean that you don't know. It doesn't mean that you are crazy. It means that you see into a realm that we can't really see with our senses. And we can actually experience that realm through our senses too. But the path of becoming a psychic, I think, is a much longer journey. And we need to be aware of that. And I think when there's this expectation, oh, will Reiki make me psychic? And, oh, I've taken a Reiki 1 training. Should I be doing an angelic reading for people? There's just too much to learn. You can't learn all that you need to know about that path in a weekend course. I think that there's a long progression. And as to what Michaela said, it's also a very easily you can get hung up in your ego and being like, oh, I know the answer or this, but it's really just our ego attached to a certain outcome, or in the world of psychic healing, we can be, maybe not humble enough to question whether or not is that a real true message, or is this just the fluctuations of my mind? And I think people who are really good at what they do, psychics, they do have an ability, and they are messengers of a higher truth, a deeper wisdom. And that's a beautiful thing to offer people, especially in times of confusion. But here's my final point, I know I've been talking about, is that if you're tuning in to pick your avocados, it's too much. It's too much. You've lost connection with reality. You have to come back in, and you have to be like, trust yourself to make your own decisions in life. And that's also a lesson, I think, within the world of psychic, is that we sometimes lose our ability, our humility to, and can be a sense of fear around making choices or making mistakes. And as long as our 2 feet are on the ground, we're human, and you are allowed to make mistakes, no matter who you are, no matter how psychic you are. So anyways, that's what I have to say.
Avocados, hey? Psychic ability to choose avocados. Is it like talking to the avocado, or is it, are you expecting like it to say, pick me, I'm ripe? No? Okay. Anyway. For me, it's very much I sort of used that word before, but letting go. Yeah. So it's rather than a taking on of something. So rather than a taking on of going, oh, now I can do this and I can do that. And it's actually the opposite, because for me, it's that letting go and really being in the flow. And it's that sense of total connection with everything, that vastness, and allowing things to move and shift and change as they should. And in that, there is no interpretation. So I think that's what you're talking about, Carrie, about people getting caught up in stuff. It's where it's like, if we're letting go into the world and allowing things to be as they are, and if we look at the natural world around us, it has a way of being. And we are a part of that. We are not separate. We are 100% a part of that. So if we can let go into that and really allow ourselves simply to be within the world, to flow as we need to flow, that is a listening, definitely. So a listening to where and what we should be doing and how we should be doing, but it's not really an interpretation of that. And I think that's when our minds that become top heavy, and we lose balance, and we start trying to, avocados.
But I think it's a big issue. And I do think it's a big issue when people
are they ripe or are they not ripe? It's such a big issue. I mean,
which one should I choose? Or you're just disconnected from your own ability to make choices in life. When you need to like talk to a psychic medium about your avocados.
Have you got anything to say about avocados, Michaela?
I love avocados. I have 4 of them on my counter at this moment, and I'm pretty sure at least 2 of them are ripe. That's what I have to say about avocados. But it's an interesting line, I think, that you're bringing up, and this kind of brings us a little bit out of the kind of immediate topic of like the connection between Reiki and psychic ability, but more in like, how do we relate to our capacities, our abilities, our allies, like outside of our immediate experience. If one has a very strong intuition, is that coming naturally, or are we like efforting to bring that in? And there might be a difference between consulting a psychic about choosing our avocados or making mundane decisions in our life, right? And I think the point you're getting to, Carrie, is like when we lose the ability to make simple decisions, right? Because we've gotten used to getting guidance from other people on the big decisions, and then that kind of filters into the day-to-day. We start losing our capacity to make decisions. It feels like that's where you were going with that. I'm also curious about how that plays out with when that person is our own self, right? Like, is there a point where we're consulting entities outside of ourself, or guidance outside of ourself, or on these tiny pieces where we feel like we can't make a decision without that? I'm again, it's not a direct experience that I have, I feel very integrated with my intuition in a sense that I'm not often like, you know, dropping into it in a really focused way, particularly not on the mundane or the day to day. But I have, you know, a close friend and colleague who talks about, you know, I'm only going to do something if I'm supposed to do it. Well, how do you know if you're supposed to do it? Well, I check in to God, to guidance, to whatever it is that he's understanding is guiding the discernment of what I am or am not supposed to do. And, you know, kind of letting that be the decision maker. And that might be a perfectly valid way to make decisions. It just sometimes it seems to be tipping into this territory, Carrie, that you're talking about, where, you know, there's kind of a conscious trusting of our own decisions that gets set aside because we're looking to guidance outside of ourselves. I don't want to say that's what's going on for this person. He's probably listening to this podcast right now. So I'm not saying that's specifically what's going on for this person, but it makes me curious. It makes me wonder, like, at what point are we deferring our own conscious decision making in lieu of something else? That's what comes up for me when I contemplate
Yeah,
off-colors.
yeah, absolutely. That's what I was thinking of, the top heavy thing, you know, where we get drawn into it too much. And I know at different times in my life, I've definitely gone that route. And it's something that I try to keep, be aware of, I guess, is more the point, isn't it? I just have some, yeah, sorry.
Just one piece related to that is just, for me, it comes back to what is our relationship with these capacities, right? Because I can't speak to a capacity that I don't have, right? I mean, I can speak to it out of curiosity, but I can't speak to it with authority. What I'm curious about and what I'm looking for in my own life or on my own capacities is, am I in healthy, good relationship with the capacities that I have and those that I don't have, right? Have I let go of expectation around the things that aren't inherent to me, and the things that are inherent to me, am I in good, relaxed, right relationship with them? Or am I constricting them around them? Am I putting a lot of effort into them? Am I overly emphasizing or relying on them as opposed to a more holistic version of how I'm going to move through the world? I think that's kind of the sort of territory that we're in this conversation.
Yeah. And, you know, coming back to the system of Reiki with that is, I may have spoken about this before, I don't remember, but I can think of a really good example of that magnification of senses. And sometimes it's just awareness, you know, because we allow, as I said, allow ourselves to actually let go and to sit back into this flow. And, you know, that story that I always come back to, because it was just a very clear story. And when I was pregnant, and the crows came to the windows. I don't know. Did I tell you that story? I don't remember. But anyway, so
Yeah.
it was a whole story about crows, and, you know, from beginning to end to the day that my child was born. And there was this connection with that. And it really was just, it didn't have to mean anything exactly, but it was really just me being aware of crows in all these different senses. And it was as if nature, there's some connection there. I don't know, and it doesn't really matter, but I wouldn't possibly have noticed the crows if I actually hadn't been practicing the system of Reiki, because I would have dismissed them and maybe not acknowledged them. But instead there was this whole deep, it was a beautiful connection that was happening then. And, you know, take it for what it was, I did. And yeah, I think sometimes we need, when we're, you know, just this idea, I guess, of letting go is what I'm coming back to. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about my avocado example, I have other examples, but I think, Bronwyn, you said it before, is that we do need common sense. And so it's like, relying on that too. And I do see some, people in the world of Reiki intuition, they're like, I had this feeling to go this way instead of that way. And I had this feeling to leave my door unlocked, and then they got robbed, and so and they were like, but I thought I heard this voice in my head that said to do this. And so I do think it's a very healthy question. Even if you do have psychic powers, I don't think that you're crazy, but I do think you have to question sometimes, is that crazy? Or is that real? Is that really an intuition that I'm receiving, and until you find the ground and you get grounded and you can sit with an intuition for a period of time. I think another telltale thing for me is if the intuition is lasting, like it stays with you for a long time. There's maybe some wisdom. And so, what I think we're really accessing is wisdom.
Absolutely.
In general, right? A wisdom, like, so, and there's times where that wisdom is essential. We absolutely need it. We absolutely need wisdom to help guide our relationship choices, our career choices. There might be times of transition, and so I think it's a really noble and worthy thing, a beautiful service for others to help people in those times. But hopefully the answer, the silver bullet that whoever is giving you, is something that's inside, and that's what is amplified. That's what's resonant. It's this voice that you can't really hear, or it's just a feeling. Like, I know for me, before I found Reiki, one of the things that I always felt was like, there is something that I meant to do in this life, and I didn't know what it was, and and I didn't know how to find that. But there was times where I felt like I was on track with it, and there was times I felt like totally disconnected, and it really affected my well-being. And Reiki has been that tool that's helped me access that deeper meaning, purpose for my life. I feel more connected to that. I can tune into it and tap into it for myself, which is an incredible value. And I think also it's a struggle too within Reiki, and I definitely see it as a yoga teacher, is that there's just kind of like this kind of energy around, like, ooh, should I go to that class because it's a Reiki master, and is she just going to be reading me the whole time and sending me energy without my permission and all of that? So there is also, to me, this connection between psychic and maybe that kind of vibe where it's just like, oh, somebody just seeing something very intimate about myself that I'm not talking about, so obviously it's none of your business. And so for me, I feel much more comfortable with the word intuitive.
That just reminded me, there was, when I first started teaching here, there was a teacher who had been around for quite a long time, and she was very psychic, and she used to use it as a marketing ploy. So what she'd do is she'd have like these introductions and to the system of Reiki, and she'd get people and she'd sit them all down and she'd start talking, and then she'd just say, and she'd just pick out all this psychic stuff about people, right? And but she was putting it across as, the reason why I can do this is because I practice the system of Reiki. And in reality, as you were saying, Michaela, there's not a direct connection between these two things. The one doesn't necessarily mean that you will absolutely be psychic if you do that. So yeah, that can be really, and that's what you're talking about too, Carrie. It's just can be quite disconcerting for someone if that's been what they've understood it is and what they're going to get out of it. Yeah.
I find that a concept that's really helpful with this, and it's helped me with it, is the concept of hibiki, and inside of the system of Reiki, and the word hibiki, which means echo, referring to these experiences and sensations that we can have inside of a Reiki session, all across all of our senses, including our intuitive, mental, psychic senses. And the idea being that those experiences are an echo of the true self, of the healing, of the transformation, of the wholeness. They aren't the thing itself. And so those things can be interesting. They can be informative. They can have wisdom inside of them. They can bring, value to our experience. And if we hold too tightly and make too much meaning, concrete meaning of those things, we're missing the actual thing itself, right? And so if we think about this in terms of psychic, especially if we're not in real close relationship with our own psychic ability, meaning it's something new to us, or it's something that we really haven't put a lot of attention and care and devoted, really working with it in a way where we've observed over time the effectiveness of it, then we want to really hold that lightly. We can be curious about information that comes through, psychic information that comes through a Reiki session or in other experiences. We can wonder about the meaning. We can notice connections for ourselves. We can share that with other people if they want us to. I certainly hope the people in this person's marketing seminars gave consent for this person to name out things that they might be reading about them, right? Or that they might be making up about them, however that would go. But that concept of Ibiki has really helped me to hold more lightly some of the sensations that I have, which are not, I wouldn't classify as psychic, but are other forms of information coming through my senses. It's been really, really freeing for me to not feel like I have to make concrete meaning of them all the time. And I don't have to give concrete meaning to another person if I'm in a session with them. I can tell them what I've experienced. I can invite them to make their own meaning, but I'm not going to hold tightly to that. Now I do have, I have one friend and student who has been developing her natural psychic abilities over decades. She has tremendous amount of direct experience of having psychic wisdom come through, high levels of intuition come through, and having that verified by the other people, right? So she's got a deep, committed relationship with her psychic abilities that she's developed over time in a very concerted way. She does, and then her Reiki practice, right, comes alongside of that in some of the ways that we've described, right? Helps to clear her sense of herself, helps to keep her focus internal, helps to keep herself integrated. And, those two things work together in her experience, but one did not come from the other, right? And so I feel like she's somebody who, if I were to seek out a psychic, I would trust asking her. And I also know her to be a person who is not going to push whatever it is that she has noticed onto people without their permission. And so those are some of the things that I mean when I talk about having a right relationship with our abilities. This student is somebody who I see as having a good, right relationship with her psychic abilities and with her Reiki practice, and is a good, has been a good model for me on how to do that well.
I have one final thing I thought I could mention is that I've been obsessed. Have you guys watched Indian matchmaking?
Not a little bit. I'm intrigued.
A little bit of it. Yeah.
It's so binge-worthy. But anyways, so it's this Indian matchmaker, this amazing woman, Seema Auntie, and she's trying to make matches with all of these, Indian people, expats, living all over the world. And there was this one really handsome dude that she's trying to find a match for this person, and he's super handsome, and everybody's like, why do you need to find a matchmaker to find your partner, your wife? And she was curious as well, so she takes his image to this psychic, this reader. I don't know what his exact title is, but this man, and you see him, and there's like an energy transference, I think, that's happening, and he's staring at his picture, and there's this really deep intensity that he's looking at this picture, and he identifies that he's been cursed. This person's been cursed, and there's a certain curse around him, and that he needs to go somewhere and do some clearing and some energy work. But it's also written in this guy's story because he had a failed, not a marriage, but a failed engagement. And what I see in all of that is that he's still holding on to a lot of guilt and like an internalization of that failed engagement, shame around it. And that all kind of was blocking him. And I think that's some of the things that we see, right? Or that we might feel, and we don't have to, but that Reiki can help us with, or, this deeper work can help us with. And the process, and maybe it's through an external ritual, but of releasing and letting ourselves go of that stuff, that we can open a pathway for what we really want, to try again, feel courageous. So I do think that they're not necessarily the same thing, psychic and Reiki, but they come together. They can come together and create, and be that little missing piece for somebody that really helps them either make sense of their life or offer their gifts to others as well.
Yeah. I mean, I always tell people that, they have the answers. And someone before said something about it's wisdom, isn't it? It's, and we have those answers inside of us. Just we put a lot of stuff on top of those answers. Sometimes it's hard to dig down and let those answers come up. And that, in many ways is what I think people imagine that a psychic ability is. Yeah. And I do believe we all have that ability. And as I said, I think it's also that thing of just being in the flow and allowing ourselves to experience life as it is, rather than what we try to pretend or make it into something else.
Well said.
All right. So, well, thank you for sharing today with me. I've loved it. I'm going to go and have an avocado. Come on, guys. And I too have a couple of avocados. They're waiting. I'm going to ask them, which one of you is it time? And I'm going to enjoy it.
Good.
Good.
And may all of you listening enjoy your avocados, enjoy your Reiki practice, enjoy clearing away everything that is in the way of your inner wisdom. And we thank you for being with us. We hope to have you with us next week. Thank you so much. We love you.
Bye. Goodbye. Click like and all those things. Bye.
All the YouTubey things.